What's the difference between an American and a European? No, this isn't the setup to a corny one-liner or a belated geography lesson. It's an important distinction that options traders must understand to avoid potentially costly mistakes. Let's break it down. Options come in two main styles, American and European. Broadly speaking, they're quite similar. For instance, they each have strike prices, expiration dates, and trade on exchanges. But the devil is in the details, and those details can greatly influence an options trader's strategy. Let's run through some of those key distinctions. The first major difference is the type of underlying asset each style covers. Options on individual stocks and exchange-traded funds are predominantly American style. They're much more common among retail investors as a result. Meanwhile, options on indices and currency pairs, as well as those traded over the counter, are generally European style. Some examples in the US markets include the S&P 500 Index, Russell 2000 Index, and the CBOE Market Volatility Index, commonly referred to as the VIX. Now be careful not to confuse an index ETF with an actual index. For example, the S&P 500 Index goes by the symbol SPX on WebBroker, which is a European-style option. But there's also a well-known ETF with the symbol SPY, which has American-style options that track the performance of the S&P index. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. So how can you be sure which style you're dealing with? One easy way is to look it up on the exchange's website. That's the Montreal Exchange for Canadian options and the Chicago Board Options Exchange for US options. The second major difference between American and European options is their exercise rights. Remember that all options contracts permit the buyer the right to buy or sell the underlying asset at an agreed upon price with the seller, who has the obligation to deliver or receive shares if assigned. While American options enable the buyer to do so anytime on or before the contract's expiration date. The holder just needs to ensure they have enough funds in their account if they want to hold the position. It's a different story for European options. They can only be exercised and assigned at expiration. This makes them less flexible than American options, but also more predictable for the seller. After all, it's easier to manage risks when you know when the contract might be assigned. Now, European options holders aren't necessarily stuck with their contract until expiry. Just like American options holders, they can still trade the contract to close their position before the expiration date if they want to avoid exercise or assignment. The third distinguishing factor between American and European options concerns how they're settled. American-style options require the seller to deliver or receive actual shares of the underlying asset to the buyer when exercised. That means shares will move in and out of each party's trading account. And remember, each option contract usually equals 100 shares deliverable. However, most European-style options have an index as the underlying asset, and indices do not have shares that can be transferred. So these options are settled in cash. That means cash will be added or subtracted from each party's trading account. In most cases, the multiplier is $100 per contract. Let's spell it out with an example. An options trader named Jack buys one put on the S&P 500 from Sarah at a strike price of $4,000. At expiration, the index is trading at $3,997, meaning Jack's put is in the money by $3. So he exercises his option. He'll net that $3 difference multiplied by the $100 multiplier in the contract for a grand total of $300, minus any fees, of course. While cash is often a more straightforward way to settle options, there can be an element of surprise with European options. Some contracts are settled based on the underlying asset's closing value on expiration day, but others are settled based on its opening print in the next trading session. That leaves the option holder exposed to a potential price swing from the prior day's close that they're unable to predict. For example, let's say an options trader named Sarah sold one call option with the strike price of $50. The underlying was trading at $49.50 at the close on expiration day, so she assumes she's in the clear because the option is out of the money and she won't be assigned. However, the underlying pops above the strike price to $51 in the opening trade of the next session, when the contract is officially settled. Suddenly, the option gets assigned, so traders should stay on their toes. For details on how an option is settled, we'd suggest you'd read through its specifications. Again, you can find that information on the website of the exchange upon which it trades. The final difference between American and European options we'll cover is their trading hours. American options generally trade from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but there are exceptions. Some American-styled ETF options for broad-based indices like SPY and DIA run a little longer until 4:15 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, European options trade from 9:30 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. Eastern. Now that you have a sense of what differentiates American and European options, you can better avoid any surprises with exercise and assignment, and potentially use them to earn some extra income from your options portfolio. That's the subject of our next lesson, trading index and ETF options.